let's take an early look at Georgia versus Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. Talk about what needs to go right for Notre Dame, what needs to go right for Georgia, and who do I think has the likely edge to pull this one out. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss any of the segments that we upload here. We upload regularly every day. I've got something to say about this sport that we so dearly love. And what we've learned so far in the first round of the college football playoff is that Indiana and Southern Methodist left much to be desired in as far as making these games competitive. Felt to me like a couple of things are going on here. One, we've got sour grapes from folks that think Alabama should have been in this thing, Ole Miss should have been in this thing, and then somehow Nick Saban decided on Saturday morning after the Notre Dame-Indiana game that Miami should have had Indiana's spot. To which I'm going to say the committee made their decisions, and you didn't make your conference championship game. I don't think you have much to complain about, and that would include Notre Dame. Notre Dame gets unscathed here, even though everybody else played 9 Power 4 teams and they played just 8. They don't play for a conference championship. They're in an open marriage with the ACC, but sure, let's beat up on the team that actually made the ACC championship game and went undefeated against ACC opponents. The ding is the strength of schedule. We could have a long discussion about how the committee or anybody should value strength of schedule, and we would need to set a definition we want to keep that is strength of schedule. Doesn't matter where you were ranked previously in the season. I think it should. I think you start 5-0, but you end 5-7. You should not get dunked on if you were one of those teams that beat that 5-0 team, especially at the front. Team like Nebraska, for instance, that Indiana beat when it was 5-1. I could keep doing this, but I guess the point here is to say we got a 12-team playoff. We don't expect everybody to be great. That's why we have first-round byes. And if you don't like it, don't lose any football games. Or more to the point, if you're Alabama, don't get spanked by Oklahoma in Oklahoma, a team that finished 6-6. Okay? That's number one. All right? Number 2 on that one, if you are Miami, don't lose to Syracuse when you have that game wrapped up. Go handle your business, make the ACC championship game, and then talk to me. Meanwhile, we've got a Boise State that's sitting with a 3 seed that I do not trust to beat Penn State. But that is another discussion that we're going to have a little bit later, or maybe we won't, because frankly, y'all have been underwhelmed by these college football games, and I could see it in the metrics for everything. We had a college football playoff game that was head up with an NFL game. It's SMU Penn State, it's Kansas City versus the Houston Texans. It's not going to really work out for you. Plus, the broadcast was kind of wild being on TNT, but it was an ESPN production. I didn't know exactly what to do with all of that because it's the first time we've seen that, but I think they're going to work this out the more they do it. Got a little bit better for Texas and Clemson. But for Georgia going into this one, you need to look at the Texas game that you just played, okay? The way in which you were able to beat Texas is the way in which you can beat Notre Dame. It is containing the run game. You contain the run game. You force Riley Leonard to throw the football down the field, make him make use of Bo Collins, make him make use of Mitchell Evans, and make Jadarian Price come in there to spell Jeremiah Love. You've got a shot here. This game was over for Notre Dame, Indiana, because Notre Dame was able to push Indiana off the football for an entire game. It was big boy football. It was man ball that we play when it's cold and the ball is heavy, and you can't trust receivers to catch the ball. You can't trust quarterbacks to have great touch. I think that Georgia is built for this, right? With a team like Texas, who was really good at running the football, especially late in the game. They basically took Quintravion Weisner out of it, and they were forcing Quinn Ewers to try to make plays while also being able to get home. That was the key for that Georgia football team. They didn't need great play out of the quarterback. They needed adequate play out of the quarterback. Now, you're going to get another opportunity to showcase that front seven that has been so mean. Jalen Walker is a dude. We know this, right? We can look at that defensive front for Georgia and go, okay, across the board, they're going to have guys that are getting drafted in the first round, guys that are probably going to leap up draft boards that haven't really heard their names all that much because they're so deep on that defense. They can rotate in 6, 7, 8 guys on that defensive line. They've got outstanding linebacker play. I mentioned Jalen Walker. I think Smile Munden fits in there. And then you got a Thorpe Award finalist on the back end of Malachi Starks. I don't know that he is the guy that would make that secondary elite. I know that he is a guy that everybody else would want to have. And to watch him on the other side of Xavier Watts, I'm going to really look forward to that. This also goes back to a game that was played in 2019, right? I was at that game in Sanford. I enjoyed it. Ended up being close at the end, but I felt for all the world like Georgia was doing anything that it wanted to that Notre Dame team on the defensive side of the ball. It's the offensive side of the ball for Georgia where you're going to have, I think, more of an issue that you got to work out. Gunnar Stockton is a dude. He has shown in the past, high school, he can sling it. And against Texas, he showed some great moxie. Put his head down, running straight at people, put them in position to win the football game. And I feel like that team that Georgia beat in Texas is a better football team than the one they're going to face in Notre Dame. I also got to take into account here that Riley Leonard is probably going to get the edge when we're talking about the quarterback comparison here. But for how long and for what? Because I think the skill set is about the same, but I just don't know if Gunnar Stockton can operate at a higher level. I think he can. But watching Riley Leonard is to say a guy that set a program record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a season with 11 is not a guy that's going to beat you through the air all that much. And frankly, hasn't had to because that defense Al Golden has had has been so great, particularly up front where they're able to get home, where they're able to crush in your offensive line. If Howard Cross is 100%, you got one of the best defenses in the country ready to T-5 on that Georgia offense. I think the matchup is going to be, for me, who is 11 up against on the outside? Can Arian Smith actually go make some plays for you? What does Dominic Levitt provide? What does Dylan Bell provide? And can you run the football with some level of authority against that team? It could be another low-scoring affair, right? Because neither one of these offenses, I think, is the one that you would expect to put up 40. It's just not. Even when Carson Beck was at his height, you could only expect them to put up 40. They weren't going to do more than that, but they didn't have to, right? Because Georgia has been a football team that has been very happy to just sit on your chest in the second half and make sure you don't move. I think the best Georgia football team that we have seen is still the one that played against Clemson to start this season. That had Carson Beck at quarterback, but he didn't get started very well in that game either. I think if Gunnar Stockton can provide something like an X factor where it's a guy that might be able to throw for 3 bills, but also may be able to run for 100 yards, you're talking about Georgia being a really safe bet to not just make the national championship game, but win their 3rd national championship in 4 years, which would be remarkable given that they would have had 3 different starting quarterbacks along the way. And there's precedent for this, right? Ohio State did this in 2014. That's the reason we know Cardale Jones' name, right? They were able to make use of all of the quarterbacks they had available to a point to where people were having a fight about who should be the starter the next year or even going into that national championship game. That's a great problem to have if you're Mike Bobo and Kirby Smart. I mean, Jaden Rashad is still there. People forget that. I think that whether or not he plays next year is going to be interesting because Gunnar Stockton wins the national championship. Jaden Rashad is going to transfer portal. He's going to go somewhere else because that dude's good enough to start somewhere, but he ain't going to be starting in Georgia. There are places that would love to have him, though, and I'm curious to find out if they find a way to get him in this game. I don't know that they will because at this point, he's kind of your emergency quarterback if Gunnar Stockton gets hurt. And after the hit that he took against Texas, I was shocked to find out he was going to make it out of concussion protocol because it was savage. I mean, it was legal, but it was savage. Can you run the football? Can you give Gunnar Stockton some opportunities to hit guys downfield? And when he does, will those receivers make those plays in the air or will Xavier Watts come up with another interception? Because that's what it seems like it's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and in the early look here, pick Georgia to win this football game and tell you why. It's not just that I think Georgia's a football team. It's that I think they have the closest thing to a home field advantage. That was helpful to Notre Dame. They had a whole lot of people that were so happy to be there, paying $1,000 a head at some point to get into Notre Dame Stadium to see the first ever college football playoff game on a home site. And we could see even in the whiteout against Penn State, it matters, right? In New Orleans, that's SEC country, right? Georgia fans got an easy trip down there, and I'm sure that Notre Dame has tried to fill up the stadium as much as they can, but I just don't see it that way, right? I see college football as a Southern sport. I'm from the South. We tend to take a little bit more pride in what we're doing, and you're on a fast track now. We're indoors. That weather, it ain't going to help you. That you are on Georgia's team now, right? Or on Georgia's turf now. Can you make this happen? Now, did they win their college football playoff game? Yeah, they beat Indiana. But can they beat Georgia? Can they? I don't think that they can. I'm going to need to see Marcus Freeman, Al Golden, Mike Denbrock come up with something mean and nasty before I can really start to think about Kirby Smart losing to this football team. But if you're a Georgia fan and you feel really good about your chances of beating Notre Dame, it's because you should. And then you get into the nitty gritty of this thing. You're getting what? 2 wins away from playing for the 2 wins away from winning the national championship.